For as long as I could remember, I'd been told I was unwanted. My foster parents, Gary and Linda, never sugarcoated it. They said it with solemn eyes and sympathetic voices, like they were doing me a favor by telling me the truth. Your mom left you at the hospital the day you were born, Linda would say, usually when I asked why I didn't look like anyone else in the family. She didn't even leave a name, just a blanket. We were the ones who stepped up when no one else would, and I believed them. What choice did I have? I grew up in a quiet town in Indiana, where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business, except mine. There was always a wall between me and the other kids at school. They had baby photos, family trees, bedtime stories about the day they were born. I had silence, gaps, and the kind of pity that made my skin crawl. Teachers always talked to me just a little too softly. Guidance counselors gave me the "I know life's been hard" look even when I didn't say a word. Gary and Linda weren't bad people, not in the way you might expect. We weren't locked in basements or starved or anything that dramatic. In public, they were perfect. Church every Sunday, potlucks in the backyard, Linda baking cookies for the neighbors like she was auditioning for a TV commercial. At home, it was more like walking on glass. Everything I had, I was reminded was a privilege. A roof, food, clothes, all because they had taken pity on me. You were lucky, Gary said once when I was 8 and broke a lamp trying to dance to some silly Disney song. Your mother didn't want you. We gave you a chance. Don't forget that. Those words burned. They etched themselves into my bones. I was lucky to be abandoned. I didn't dare argue. I just nodded and cleaned up the broken glass with trembling hands. Over time, I became the quiet kid, the obedient one. I got good grades, made honor roll, stayed out of trouble. Because deep down, I thought maybe if I was perfect enough, I'd finally deserve to be wanted, loved. But something never felt quite right. There were moments, small ones, that made me question the story they told me. Like how Linda would flinch anytime I asked about the hospital I was born in. Or the one time Gary got drunk at a neighbor's 4th of July party and called me her little mistake before storming off. I didn't know who her was, but I wanted to. One day in 9th grade, we had a school project about family heritage. Everyone was supposed to bring in photos, family stories, cultural traditions. When I told my teacher I didn't have anything, she smiled sadly and said, "That's okay, sweetheart. Just write about your foster family instead." I went home that day feeling empty, like a puzzle with pieces missing. That night, I stood in front of the hallway mirror for a long time, staring at my face, at the almond-shaped eyes, the thick dark curls, the mole under my chin. I didn't look like Linda or Gary. I didn't even feel like I came from the same world. But I buried those thoughts again, like I always did, because questioning them, my parents, felt dangerous. And somewhere deep down, I was terrified that if I didn't behave, they might send me away like they claimed my real mother did. Still, the questions lingered. When I turned 16, things got worse. Gary lost his job, and the tension in the house became unbearable. He snapped more often, and Linda started blaming me for everything, from missing mail to burnt toast. "We should have let the state take you," she muttered one night after I accidentally stained the laundry. "All you've done is drain us." That was the first time I started to feel real anger. Not confusion. Not guilt. Anger. Because something inside me whispered, "This isn't what love is supposed to feel like." And that's when I started looking for answers. At first, I didn't know where to begin. Gary and Linda kept everything locked away: documents, photo albums, even their tax papers. But then one stormy Saturday afternoon, when they were out at a church fundraiser, I noticed something strange. A soft draft coming from the upstairs hallway, right near the ceiling. I reached up and felt a latch I'd never noticed before. An attic. I pulled down the ladder, heart pounding, and climbed into the dark, dusty space above our house. It smelled like mildew and forgotten years. Cobwebs clung to my arms, and my flashlight flickered against piles of old boxes, broken furniture, and holiday decorations. And then I saw it, a small wooden chest, shoved behind a stack of empty paint cans. It was locked with a simple latch, the kind I could pry open with a butter knife. I hesitated. Something about it felt off, like I wasn't supposed to be here. But I opened it anyway. Inside were papers. Dozens of them. Most were old medical bills and receipts. But then, at the very bottom, was a faded blue envelope with my name on it. Not my foster name. My birth name. I froze. My real name. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The envelope was sealed, but the paper was brittle. It opened with the faintest tug. Inside was a letter, written in shaky handwriting. The date on the corner? The day after I was born. The first line shattered everything. To my sweet baby girl, I'm so sorry I can't be there right now. But I want you to know, I never gave you up. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't breathe. My eyes blurred with tears as I read on. Word by word, the story unraveled like a knot pulled loose after years of tightening. She talked about fear, about people who made her go, about how she begged to keep me, but someone she trusted, took me away before she could fight back. And the kicker? The name she mentioned at the end. A name I'd never heard before, but that would become the key to everything. Margaret Ellen Carter. Not my mother. My grandmother. And the person who'd signed the custody papers behind my mom's back. I sat in that attic for hours, rereading the letter over and over, even after the ink began to blur from my tears. Every word pulled at me like a scream buried under years of silence. My whole life, I'd been told I was thrown away like garbage, that no one had ever wanted me. But here, in shaky blue handwriting, was proof that someone had wanted me, that my mother had fought for me. And someone else, this Margaret Ellen Carter, had taken me anyway. I didn't know who she was, but I was going to find out. I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into my sweatshirt pocket like it was the most sacred thing I'd ever touched. Then I packed up the box just the way I found it, locked the attic, and acted like nothing had happened. That night at dinner, I couldn't stop staring at Gary and Linda. Everything they said felt fake. Every smile, every casual comment. I saw right through them. I kept wondering, did they know about the letter? Had they met my mom? What had they done to her? For the first time, I was truly afraid of them. But I also knew I couldn't let them see that. I played along, nodded when Linda asked about school, laughed when Gary told some recycled dad joke, all while the words of the letter echoed in my head. I never gave you up. I barely slept that night. I kept turning the name over and over in my head, Margaret Ellen Carter. In the morning, while Gary was in the garage and Linda was vacuuming, I slipped into their home office. It was locked, but I'd watched Gary punch the code in 100 times. 0505, his birthday. Inside, I searched every drawer, every cabinet. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, but then I found a file labeled Placement Documents. There it was. A scanned copy of the original custody agreement. My name. My mother's name, Angela Marie Carter. And listed under guardian approval signature in faint ink, Margaret Ellen Carter. My grandmother. She was the one who signed me over. But it didn't make sense. Why would a grandmother take a baby from her own daughter and hand her over to strangers? The more I read, the more twisted it got. The paperwork said Angela was mentally unfit, that she had episodes of instability and was currently institutionalized. But the letter in my pocket didn't sound like someone unstable. It sounded like someone heartbroken, desperate, trapped. And that's when I made a choice that would change everything. I skipped school the next day. Told Linda I had a fever. She barely looked up from her phone. Once they left for work, I got on the family computer and searched every database I could find. I didn't know much, but I had 3 things: a name, a date, and a city, my birth city, where the hospital was. After a few hours of digging, I found something. A small obituary from 11 years ago. Margaret Ellen Carter. Died at 67. Survived by one daughter, Angela Carter, currently a patient at Rosewood Rehabilitation Center. I stared at the screen, not even blinking. My heart felt like it had stopped and started again all at once. My mother was alive. She was in some kind of facility. A place I'd never heard of before, about 3 hours away. All these years. She hadn't abandoned me. She hadn't disappeared. She'd been locked away. And no one ever told me. It was like I was living someone else's life. I suddenly saw every moment in a new light, the lucky child they'd taken in. The pity. The way Gary and Linda always said, "Be grateful we took you." The condescending smiles. The gaslighting. They hadn't saved me. They had taken me. I couldn't stop crying. Not because I was scared, but because for the first time in my life, I felt something bigger than pain. Hope. Someone was out there. Someone who'd written me a letter full of love, even when she thought she might never see me again. And she was still alive. That weekend, I waited until Gary and Linda went to a marriage seminar, something they did twice a year that usually meant leaving me behind with freezer meals and a long list of chores. But I didn't stay home. I took the bus. 3 hours on a Greyhound with just a backpack, the letter, and the last $30 for my babysitting money. My hands shook the whole ride. I didn't know what I was going to say. What if she didn't remember me? What if the letter wasn't from her? What if she'd really been sick all along? But I had to know. I had to. The Rosewood Rehabilitation Center looked nothing like the sterile hospital I'd imagined. It was warm, peaceful. A small campus of stone buildings and gardens with walking paths. It looked more like a retreat center than a place for the mentally unfit. I asked the front desk about Angela Carter, and the woman smiled kindly. "She's been here a long time," she said. "But she's doing really well." "Who are you?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Who was I? Finally, I just said, "I'm her daughter." The woman froze. Her hand slowly covered her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "We didn't think." She always said, "Oh honey, she's going to lose her mind." She led me through a garden path to a bench under a maple tree. "Wait here," she said. "I'll go get her." My legs bounced with nerves. I couldn't stop shaking. And then, after what felt like an eternity, I saw her. She was thinner than I imagined. Her hair was streaked with gray. But her eyes, God, those eyes, they were my eyes. She stopped walking the second she saw me. And then she covered her mouth and collapsed onto the bench across from me, sobbing uncontrollably. "Is it really you?" she whispered. I nodded. She reached out with trembling fingers, touching my face like she couldn't believe I was real. I prayed for this moment every day. Every birthday, I lit a candle. I thought I'd never see you again. I cried too. I couldn't hold it in. "I thought you left me," I choked. "They told me you abandoned me." She shook her head violently. "No, no, never. I loved you. I fought for you. But my mother, she said I wasn't ready. That I was too young. I had postpartum depression, yes, but it was temporary. I just needed help. And instead, her voice cracked. She signed the papers while I was sedated. I woke up and you were gone. My whole body went numb." She went on, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I lost everything. And when I tried to get you back, the court said I wasn't stable. My mother put me here. She told everyone I was dangerous. I couldn't breathe. It felt like my world was crashing down again, but this time into something real. You wrote me a letter," I whispered, pulling it from my bag. She gasped, reaching for it with shaking hands. "You found it? After all these years?" We sat there, reading it together, rebuilding a bridge no one ever wanted us to cross. And in that moment, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. Gary and Linda had known. They'd known everything. And they kept me anyway. not to love me, but to own me. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. Angela, my real mom, insisted I call her that, at least for now. She said it with a nervous smile, like she didn't want to pressure me. But I could tell how badly she wanted to hear me say, Mom. We spent the whole afternoon together in the garden. I told her everything, what school I went to, what my hobbies were, how I loved painting, but had to hide it because Linda thought it was a waste of time. She listened like every word I said was a miracle. Like my voice was something sacred. She told me her story too. The one no one ever bothered to tell me. Angela had just turned 19 when she had me. My father, she didn't even want to say his name, had disappeared the second she told him she was pregnant. She was scared, broke, and living with her mom, Margaret, who'd always been strict and controlling. When you were born, she said, her eyes glassy with memory, I was terrified but happy. You were so small, so perfect. But I was struggling. I cried a lot. I didn't sleep. I was scared all the time. My mom said it was postpartum depression. But instead of helping me, she used it against me. Margaret had power. She was well connected in the community. When Angela had a panic attack one night, Margaret had her committed for evaluation. While Angela was sedated and under observation, her mother petitioned the court for emergency guardianship. Claimed Angela was unfit. Claimed the baby, me, was in danger. By the time Angela got out, the custody papers were signed. I was placed in foster care. She never even got to say goodbye. I tried to fight it, she said, gripping my hand. But every time I did, she threatened to send me back. Said I wasn't stable. That I needed long-term care. I thought if I played along, I could get better and maybe get you back. But then she sent me here. Angela had been at Rosewood for 17 years. 17 years locked away. And the worst part? Rosewood wasn't even a bad place. It just wasn't home. She was kept under the radar, medicated just enough to keep her compliant. Every few years she tried to petition for release, but the paperwork always got lost or denied. Eventually, she stopped trying. Until now. Now she had me. When I left that night, we promised we'd write to each other every day. She handed me a folded page she'd written years ago and never sent, another letter she hoped I'd someday read. I clutched it like gold as I boarded the bus back home. But I wasn't the same girl anymore. I had a fire in me now. A purpose. And I was going to get answers. The moment I walked in the door, Gary was already waiting. Arms crossed. Eyes cold. Where were you? He growled. I held my ground. With someone who actually wanted me. He took a step forward. Don't get smart with me, girl. Linda appeared in the hallway. We know you skipped school. The principal called. I wasn't at school, I said calmly. I was with my mother. They both froze. Gary's face went pale. What did you say? I found the letter, I said, pulling it from my pocket. The one you hid in the attic. The one she wrote me the day after I was born. Linda's voice trembled. That letter wasn't meant for you. It would have just confused you. No, I snapped. It would have told me the truth. The truth you stole from me. They looked at each other like two liars cornered by their own lies. And then Gary did something that made my stomach turn. He laughed. This is exactly why we didn't tell you, he said, his voice dripping with smugness. Because you'd romanticize some broken girl who gave you up. She didn't give me up, I said. Your documents said she was mentally unfit. But she was drugged. Lied to. Locked away by her own mother. Linda stepped forward, trying to soften her voice. Sweetheart, even if that's true, what could we do? We didn't know all that. We were just trying to help. You knew enough to hide her letters, I said. You knew enough to keep me from finding out anything real. You didn't want to help. You wanted control. Gary slammed his fist on the table. You think we wanted you? We were told it was a good deal. Tax breaks. Community praise. We gave you a home, clothes, food, and this is how you repay us? That was it. Everything clicked. They hadn't kept me out of love. They'd kept me because I was useful. A symbol. A charity case they could parade around. And when I got older and started asking questions, they doubled down on the lie. I'm leaving, I said. Linda's eyes widened. You're 17. You have nowhere to go. I have somewhere, I said quietly. I have her. Gary sneered. You think that place will take you in? You think your mom's some kind of hero? No, I said. But she's not a liar. And then I went upstairs, packed everything I owned into 2 bags, and walked out. I didn't even cry. Not anymore. The next few days were a whirlwind. I stayed with a friend from school, Talia, who'd always had my back. Her parents were stunned by my story, but they believed me. They helped me talk to a social worker, who in turn reached out to Rosewood and confirmed everything. Then came the big step. Angela petitioned for release. With me as a character witness and the letter as evidence, things moved fast. The facility staff, who never believed she belonged there in the first place, testified on her behalf. And just 3 weeks later, she was free. The first night she stayed with Talia's family and me, we sat on the back porch for hours, just watching the stars. No yelling. No fear. Just silence and peace. She told me about my baby years, things I didn't even know she remembered. The lullaby she used to hum in the hospital. The way I'd always reach for her finger before falling asleep. I missed everything, she said, tears in her eyes. But we still have time, right? I nodded. Yeah, we do. We didn't have much money. No job. No apartment. But we had each other. And for the first time, I felt whole. Life with Angela wasn't perfect, but it was real. We ended up in a small 1-bedroom apartment not far from Rosewood. It was old, drafty, and the walls were paper thin, but it was ours. Angela got a part-time job at a florist, and I picked up weekend shifts at a diner nearby while finishing school online. We shared chores, cooked together, and slowly pieced together the life that had been stolen from us. Every night before bed, we'd talk for hours. About the life we missed, and the one we were building now. I learned that Angela loved poetry, hated tomatoes, and used to dance in her bedroom when she was stressed. And she learned that I loved sketching, dreamed of going to art school, and hated being told I was lucky. We were getting to know each other for the first time, not as strangers, but as mother and daughter. Still, there was one thing I couldn't let go of. Gary and Linda. They were still out there, living their perfect suburban lives. Probably telling people that I ran away or turned out ungrateful. They'd buried the truth for so long, and I knew them well enough to know they weren't going to admit anything without a push. And that's exactly what I planned to do. I started gathering everything. The letter Angela wrote, the custody papers with Margaret's forged signature, photos from the attic that had Angela's name scratched out. I even contacted the facility director at Rosewood to get official documentation proving that Angela had been involuntarily committed by her mother with no psychiatric evaluation. The truth was no longer just personal, it was legal. Angela was nervous when I told her. I just got you back, she said softly, sitting beside me on the worn couch. Are you sure we want to stir all this up again? I'm not doing it for revenge, I said. I'm doing it because no one else ever stood up for you. Or for me. I'm tired of hiding. She squeezed my hand. Okay. Then I'll stand with you. We found a lawyer who took our case pro bono, someone who'd worked with wrongly institutionalized patients before. He was appalled by what he read. They used the system to their advantage, he told us. They silenced your mother, then exploited the child welfare system to make themselves look like heroes. We filed a civil case against Gary and Linda for emotional abuse, wrongful custody, and intentional withholding of identity. At first, they didn't respond. Then the threats started. Anonymous letters in our mailbox. Hang-up calls in the middle of the night. A message on social media from a fake account. You don't know what you're doing. Stop now. But it only made us more certain. The court date was set for late October. I was terrified, not of losing, but of seeing them again, those faces that haunted my childhood. The people who told me I was unworthy of love, just to keep control. When the day came, Angela wore her nicest blouse, and I carried the letter in my hand like a shield. Talia sat in the back row for support. Even the director from Rosewood showed up to testify. When Gary and Linda walked in, they acted like they were the victims. Linda cried. Gary crossed his arms and glared like he was above it all. They brought their own lawyer, who tried to paint us as manipulative. Claimed we were just trying to ruin the lives of two generous people. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. When Angela took the stand, the courtroom fell silent. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, she grew stronger. She told them everything. How her mother used fear and power to take me away. How Gary and Linda kept her letters from me. How they never tried to return custody when they found out the truth. Then I testified. I told the judge about the attic, the lies, the punishments, the years of feeling like a burden. I read the letter aloud, every single word, and when I looked up, I saw the expression on Linda's face change. It was the first time I'd ever seen guilt crack through her perfect mask. The judge didn't rule that day, but the case made headlines. Small-town foster parents accused of emotional abuse and hiding the truth from a child for over a decade. People started talking. Neighbors who once brought them casseroles began crossing the street to avoid them. And that's when the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. A woman showed up at our apartment a week later. Middle-aged, nervous, holding an old leather binder. "Are you Angela Carter?" she asked. Angela nodded slowly. "Yes." The woman introduced herself as Carol Monroe. "I used to work in your mother's attorney's office," she said. "I saw the story in the paper, and I realized I might have something." She handed Angela the binder. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Letters Angela had written during the first 2 years of my life, begging for visitation, asking to know if I was safe, pleading for updates. None of them had been mailed. Margaret had intercepted them all and kept them. I watched my mother cry as she flipped through each one. "She knew," she whispered. "She knew how much I loved you." And she buried it. There was even a note Margaret had written, cold and sharp, at the bottom of one letter. "She'll never find out. That child is ours now." That was the moment everything crystallized. This wasn't just neglect. This was theft. We gave the binder to our lawyer, and when the judge saw it, everything changed. The court ruled in our favor. Gary and Linda were ordered to pay restitution, stripped of their foster licenses, and issued a formal apology in court. But I didn't need their money. What we wanted, was our story back. That night, Angela and I sat on the apartment floor, surrounded by old letters and new beginnings. We weren't broken anymore. We were healing. "You gave me my voice back," she said. "No," I told her, smiling through tears. "You always had it. They just tried to bury it." It had been 6 months since the court case ended, but the echoes of it still lived in us. Angela and I had moved again, this time to a quiet, sunlit apartment closer to the city. It wasn't fancy, but it had 2 bedrooms, a tiny balcony where we planted flowers, and enough light to make the living room feel warm all day. It was the kind of home we never had before. One built on truth. One filled with laughter. One where I didn't feel like a guest in my own life. I legally changed my name back to what it had been at birth. Maya Carter. It felt strange at first, like slipping into a sweater that had been tucked away for years. But the more I said it out loud, the more it felt like mine. It wasn't just a name, it was a reclamation of identity. Of every year I'd been forced to live a lie. Angela framed the letter she wrote me the day after I was born. It hangs in our hallway now, right by the front door. Every time I pass it, I remember how far we've come. But the healing wasn't immediate. Not even close. There were days when Angela woke up shaking, nightmares still clawing at her from years in Rosewood. There were days when I'd walk past a woman in the grocery store with Linda's perfume and feel my throat tighten. Trauma doesn't disappear. It lingers, stretches, hides in corners. But now, we didn't face it alone. One afternoon, I came home from my shift at the diner and found Angela sitting at the table, a showbox in front of her. She looked up at me with a nervous smile. "I found something," she said, while unpacking the last boxes. Inside were tiny clothes. Baby clothes. Mine. A hospital bracelet with my birth weight scribbled in faded ink. A blurry Polaroid of Angela holding me, smiling through tears. A folded note from a nurse that said, "She has your eyes." "I kept these hidden," she said, "even when your grandmother tried to throw them out. I don't know why I hid them back then. Maybe part of me always believed this day would come." I couldn't speak. I just wrapped my arms around her and held on tight. That weekend, we went to the park with a disposable camera. I know, it sounds so basic, but for us, it was like writing a chapter of our lives. Angela took pictures of me drawing in the grass. I took pictures of her dancing to music from her old iPod. We took selfies. We laughed like we were making up for lost time. Because we were. Time we didn't even know had been stolen from us. Eventually, we printed those photos and made a scrapbook. On the front cover, in bright gold letters, we wrote, "Year 1, the real beginning." Because that's what it felt like. A first year. A reset. Not just for me, but for her too. Angela started writing again. Poems mostly. She said it helped her breathe again. I read one she left on the kitchen counter one morning. They told me she was gone, that I should forget the name I whispered in my dreams. But now she laughs in my kitchen, and my soul has finally come home. I cried when I read it, not the kind of tears I used to cry, the quiet, buried ones. These were the full-bodied, cleansing kind. The kind that tells you you're finally free. I graduated high school online with honors. Angela sat next to me on the couch during the ceremony, holding my hand as I pressed play on the live stream. When my name was called, Maya Carter, she clapped louder than anyone, tears streaming down her cheeks. Afterwards, she surprised me with an acceptance letter I hadn't even known came in the mail. I'd been accepted to Riverstone College of the Arts. Full scholarship. The dream I thought I had to bury to survive? It was happening. I saved every dollar I could, Angela said. I wanted you to know that I believe in you. That I always have. Before I left for college, I asked her something I'd been holding onto for a long time. "Do you ever wish things had gone differently?" I asked. "If your mom hadn't, if everything hadn't happened?" She thought for a long time. "I wish I could have protected you," she finally said. "I wish I'd been stronger back then. But if things had gone differently, you might not be the same Maya sitting in front of me right now. And I wouldn't trade this version of you for anything." I nodded, because I understood. We don't get to choose the pain that shapes us. But we do get to decide what we build from it. At college, I made new friends. I started a blog called Letters She Never Got to Send and shared our story piece by piece. I didn't use names at first, just feelings. Truths. Secrets. It went viral faster than I ever expected. Thousands of messages from other kids who'd been through similar things, adopted, fostered, lost, lied to. I wasn't alone. And neither were they. One day, a girl messaged me. "My mom gave me up too. I always thought it was because I wasn't enough. But your story made me wonder. Maybe it wasn't her fault. Maybe I need to ask." That's when I realized something huge. Telling the truth doesn't just heal you. It sets other people free, too. Angela started speaking at women's shelters. She told her story not with bitterness, but with bravery. "We don't have to be what they said we were," she told a room full of women once. "We get to choose again." She always made sure to tell them about me. How I found her. How I saved her too. One evening, years later, I stood in the attic of that old house again, Gary and Linda's house. Not because I wanted to go back, but because it had finally gone up for sale, and the new owners gave me permission to collect anything that belonged to me. There wasn't much left, just dust and hollow echoes. But when I opened that attic door again, I didn't feel fear this time. I felt power. Because the girl who once climbed those stairs looking for a piece of herself, she found it. She became whole. I don't think I'll ever forget what it felt like to be told I was abandoned, or what it felt like to find out I wasn't. Those scars run deep, but they don't define me anymore. I'm Maya Carter, daughter of a woman who fought every system designed to silence her. A girl who found her truth in a dusty attic, in a folded letter, and in her mother's trembling voice. I was never abandoned. I was taken. But now, I'm taking my life back. And this time, no one's stealing it from me again.